Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the next session, which is about public procurement and competition. I'm Juliette Enser. I am Director for Competition Enforcement at the UK CMA. In the UK alone, public procurement represents 300 billion of expenditure approximately a year. And we know, as competition enforcers, that the value of public investment can be severely compromised by anti-competitive behaviour, like bid rigging. We also know that procurement is highly vulnerable to bid rigging, and that bid rigging inflates prices by 20% or more. So the fight against bid rigging in public procurement remains pivotal to drive value for taxpayers and more broadly to ensure the public sector benefits from the dynamism and innovation that's driven by competitive markets, which is why targeting bid rigging in public procurement is a key area of focus for the CMA. It's also why I'm incredibly excited to be joined today by colleagues from agencies together with a deep experience in tackling cartels in this area to talk about how competition authorities can drive market outcomes here. Before I introduce them though, I think it's worth also saying that, as highlighted in the first session this morning, competition authorities like the CMA can have an important role in public procurement beyond cartel enforcement. In particular, we can use the advocacy tools that we have, or markets tools or similar sector tools to help public sector purchasers buy wisely, ensuring that they use their role in designing purchasing frameworks, other interactions with sellers to achieve the best possible outcomes for taxpayers. And indeed, there's going to be a deeper session on that later in the week. But what this panel aims to do is really to bring cartels back to the center, to the mainstream of discussion. And the panelists today have kindly agreed to share their perspective on how successfully to deter and detect bid rigging. And we propose to focus on three themes. That's detection, working with partners, and driving compliance. And I hope these will chime with many of you. They certainly resonated with me when I was reflecting about the topic from a CMA perspective, and how we're working both at a regime and a practical level to reduce the possibilities for successful bid rigging within the UK. So, for example, at a regime level, we had a new Procurement Act which came into force just a few months ago, which increased the risk for cartelists by introducing the prospect of mandatory debarment from public procurement for up to 5 years. We're also increasingly working, my team, with our data colleagues, using their deep expertise in data analytics to help identify anomalies in the data which allow us to detect bid rigging. Which brings us nicely to my first question, but before I ask it, let me introduce the panel today. So we have, to my left, Cani Fernandez from Spain's CNMC, Mr. Byunghoon, the Secretary General for Investigation at Korea's FTC, and Professor Elisabetta Iossa, Commissioner at Italy's AGCM. We also hope to be joined, we are about to be joined by Alexandre Barreto de Souza from CADE, just in time. So I know that colleagues from Spain, from Brazil, from Korea, each of you are fortunate enough to have access to a platform storing centralized bidding data. Can you tell us how you use this data or other screening tools in the fight against bid rigging, including any recent developments, any lessons you want to share with agencies who might be thinking of building out their data capabilities?
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure being here. Yeah, we are here to talk about cartels, Andreas. We are here to talk about cartels. And not only to please you, but also because in public procurement, this is one of the things that we have to deter. And not only to please you, but because, for example, in Spain, 11%, between 11% and 12% of our GDP is public procurement, and it's going to increase even more so because we are receiving funds from the European Union that are going to be channeled through public procurement. So the thing is that we are confronted with an area which requires very close monitoring, and in which we were lucky enough and privileged to have people at the CNMC with foresight to start in 2014 already trying to get the data from the public procurement, then the central portal, but then also making agreements with all the regional authorities that were involved in public procurement, and through those agreements getting all the data, cleaning the data, structure the data, then creating an algorithm in-house that was able to structure non-structured information. For example, you have a PDF and the machine cannot read it, but if you structure it into a form, you can then use the information. Then we decided that because leniency was okay, is one of the tools that you are using to detect and deter, but because of the damages actions, that was not a very safe harbor, so we wanted to increase the ex officio detection. We were also trying to devise tools, AI tools in particular, to detect the patterns that we were able to diagnose once we were able to structure the information, and I will explain to you this very quickly. When you have a winning bid, by law in Spain, you have to include the whole information of your winning bid in a structured form. You have a form that you have to fill, but the information regarding the bids that are losers is just uploaded in bulk. With this algorithm that we created, we were able to structure that information as well, and then see that, for example, company A was winning, then losing, then winning, then losing, and then we had the patterns. Once we got there, we continued training our algorithm in order to teach the algorithm to detect which were the features that the algorithm had to search for in order to conclude whether a particular bid was more likely competitive or more likely collusive. And we were including, in doing so, all the cases that had already been decided by the Supreme Court in Spain in order to get it right. As such, we created a control group, and we were training, and all the results that we recently got are closer to 99%, never under 90% of rigor and precision. The algorithm is called BRAVA, Bid Rigging Algorithm for Vigilance in Antitrust, and we are now in the next frontier, which is trying to detect automatic pricing collusion. But for the moment, I have to tell you, and this is my last remark and my piece of advice, at the moment we have 4 million agreements in our database, 4.7 bids in total, and my piece of advice with you is twofold. First, because you need data and you need to clean the data and treat the data, be patient. I mean, try to make your people understand that the cleaning of data is extremely important. If you don't have a database that's sufficiently solid and robust, your results are going nowhere. And in order to, and this is my second piece of advice, in order to get there, try to convince your legislators, your governments, your parliaments, that it is of the utmost importance to enact laws that will will make it compulsory on the public procurement authorities to provide you with the data. The cleaner the better, but data at the end of the day, yeah.
Thank you. Alexandre, I don't know if you would like also to share your experience about using data, which I know is an important part of your cartel detection.
Definitely, thank you, Juliette. First, sorry for the late. We are in a discussion with DG Comp about practical cases, and the time flew. Thank you so much for an invitation. And first of all, I must say that bid rigging, procurement, public and cartels are definitely a priority for us at CADE. And indeed, we have developed a ways to detect and address bid rigging in public procurement, combining traditional enforcement and data-driven innovation. But given a step back, I must say that in Brazil, our leniency program still is one of the main tools to detect cartels. So we can say that it's an effective program in Brazil. But we have also moved to more proactive detections. And one of our most advanced tools is the cerebral system or brain system, very similar to the system that Cani has in Spain. And the cerebral system is basically a data analytics platform. While it's not artificial intelligence in the strict sense, it applies machine learning, algorithm, statistical filters, and economic screens to procurement data, primarily from our federal procurement platform. All the public procurement in Brazil, it's in a platform, so we have a lot of data to analyze. This platform is called CompressNet, and it helps us to spot red flags like bid rotation, identical proposals, or market allocation patterns. Very similar, that's the system in Spain. I can say that cerebral system has already proven its value in real cases. For instance, in an operation called Merchant of Venice, which investigated cartels in the medical devices sector, Cerebral helped us to identify high-risk targets, enabling down raids and collection of solid evidence. In another investigation involved fire brigade services, it flagged irregularities across more than 4,700 procurement processes. That led to search warrants against 13 companies involved in over 50 rigged tenders. In addition to tech tools, we also have expanded our whistleblower program through our Click Denuncia. That's a platform in the internet that any citizen and enterprise can make a complaint to CADE. It's a secure and confidential channel that more than multiplied by 4 the number of reports we receive from like 500 in recent past to more than 2,500 now. But to finish this first part, in my opinion, what really amplifies the impact of these tools is institutional cooperation. We have signed more than 30 agreements with other public bodies in Brazil, like federal prosecutors, regulatory agencies, and civil society groups. In fact, for instance, our first hub and spoke cartel case was only possible thanks to the evidence shared with the federal police in Brazil in an unrelated investigation. So while detecting cartels is always a challenge due to their even nature, this mix of data analytics, interagency cooperation, and a strong whistleblowing mechanism is helping us move from reactive to proactive enforcement and with real results.
Great, thanks. And I mean, your description of the scale of some of those investigations, I think, does underline the continued importance of this area of our work. Mr. Ahn, I think you were hoping to be able to share with us some of your experiences in the area of detection.
Okay, thank you. Bid rigging in public procurement severely undermines government finances and public welfare, causing substantial economic and social harm. This is why the KFTC places strong emphasis on detecting and addressing bid rigging in tenders issued by public institutions. This focus is clearly reflected in the fact that last year, bid rigging accounted for 70 out of 83 cartel cases. To detect cartels, the KFTC utilized a range of tools, including a lineage program and a reward system. In addition, the bid rigging indicator analysis system, so-called BRIAS, is actively used to monitor cartels in public procurement by analyzing centralized bidding data. BRIAS, introduced in 2006, collects tender information from procurement agencies, performs quantitative analysis, and uses the results to support investigations. Let me briefly explain how the process works. First, the system classifies tenders exceeding a certain transaction value by product category. It then calculates a score for each tender through a comprehensive analysis of bidding ratios, the number of bidders, and other relevant indicators. These scores are compared against specific thresholds. If tenders exceeding the threshold accounted for more than 50% within a category, that category is designated for intensive monitoring. Finally, the categories are reviewed twice a year and ex officio investigations are initiated if necessary. BRIAS is a valuable tool not only for handling reported cases, but also for supporting ex officio investigations. Specifically, it aids in proactively identifying tender types, categories, and the behavior patterns of participants, and is regularly used in investigating planning. Furthermore, BRIAS helps prevent and deter bid rigging by signaling to the market that the KFTC is closely monitoring procurement activities. Regarding recent notable developments, we have significantly expanded our data coverage through improvements to BRIAS. Previously, bid information was collected only from central and local governments, as well as state-owned enterprises. However, following amendments to the relevant laws, the scope of organizations required to submit bidding data was expanded in 2024 to include municipally owned companies and other government and public entities. As a result, approximately 700 organizations were added, and the volume of data has doubled, now reaching an estimated 60,000 entries per year. As more information is collected, generating meaningful insights through analysis becomes increasingly important. Competition authorities around the world are actively pursuing bid rigging detection using big data and artificial intelligence. The KFTC likewise recognizes the need to elevate BRIAS to a new level to better safeguard public finances and promote public welfare.
Great that you've been able to expand your data collection in that way. But of course, data screening is only one tool in the box, as Alexandre already mentioned. Elisabetta, are there other tools in your experience that are particularly useful?
Thank you, Juliette. Absolutely. I think all authorities have been thinking in the past few years how to expand the toolbox. There is always one more tool that you can try to sort of to get or to improve. In fact, let me just mention that in 2012, actually, the Italian authority had a pilot project on bid screening, and it led to 2 investigations. But overall, the project was discontinued precisely because of what Cani Fernandez said, that the data was not of sufficiently high quality. And at that time, we also missed data on the bids, which was critical to see bidding patterns. We've had historically most ex officio investigations because leniency applications have been historically low in Italy. So what we've done recently is twofold. We have revised our leniency guidelines taking on board many of the suggestions coming from a very interesting academic research on incentive in leniency. So we have changed the guidelines and the discounts by sort of giving greater incentives for applicants to come second, okay? And also we have invested in a platform, the whistleblowing platform, that has proven to be extremely successful. 4 of our 7 cartel cases that are ongoing are coming from these whistleblowing platforms. Just more generally, I think this has been mentioned by Alexandre as well. We have benefited from MOU with public procurers and with other entities. I'll come back to this, in particular public prosecutors, but maybe I'll say this later. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I'm glad that you raised the issue of partnerships, because I think for all of us, partnerships with other agencies, it can be really important, whether that be other enforcement agencies, but also the victim procurement agencies themselves. And it would be great to hear more about your work with partners in this area. And I think perhaps Mr. An, you could tell us about the Korean experience here.
Okay. As you noted, close cooperation with relevant agencies is essential to eradicating collusion in public procurement. In recognition of this, the KFTC has strengthened its network through relationship building, institutional arrangements, employee exchange programs, and other initiatives. Since 2014, we have hosted the semi-annual conference on bid rigging detection in public procurement to coordinate cross-agency efforts to prevent bid rigging. The conference serves as a platform for contracting authorities to share their experiences in monitoring activities and in implementing measures to combat bid rigging schemes in the market. For instance, at last December's conference, the KFTC shared with 17 agencies how BURIAS is currently being operated and how it will be enhanced. Participants also discussed ways to improve the accuracy of indicator analysis based on bidding data. Meanwhile, employee involvement in collusion has consistently been identified as a contributing factor to bid rigging in the public sector. To address this issue, in 2023, the KFTC launched a campaign targeting 14 major agencies that together account for half of the total value of public tenders in South Korea. The campaign encouraged these agencies to establish internal audit systems and HR programs designed to prevent employee involvement in bid rigging schemes. A declaration ceremony was also held to reaffirm anti-bid rigging commitments, culminating in the adoption of a code of conduct. Alongside these efforts, personnel from the Public Procurement Service has been dispatched to and is currently working with the KFTC's bid rigging investigation division. In addition, the KFTC requests the Department of Contractors involved in collusion, in line with the practices commonly followed by other competition authorities? Thank you.
Thank you. Alexandre, I don't know. I know you already mentioned that you work with other prosecutors, but I don't know if there's more, for example, whether you also work with victim agencies.
Yes, definitely. It's interesting because we can speak about cooperation, but also about advocacy. Well, we know that enforcement is crucial, but we believe in Brazil that enforcement alone is not enough. So we must invest in prevention and also in advocacy. Let me give you some examples that we are doing in Brazil. One of our initiatives is a practical guide to fighting cartels in public procurement. It's a hands-on manual for procurement officials with tips like, for instance, to avoid narrow technical specifications in the designing tenders, split contracts into smaller lots when possible, make procurement cycles less predictable to reduce the risk of coordination. Even practical ideas like delaying the release of reference prices or avoiding unnecessary bidder meetings can make a difference. And we complement this guide with training sessions across all levels of government. We teach officials to recognize red flags like identical language in bids, suspiciously similar pricing, proposals sent from the same IP address, or even identical formatting errors, all potential signs of collusion. Since 2019, we have trained over 1,000 officials in Brazil, including public prosecutors and audit authorities. These sessions not only raise awareness, but also build a broader ecosystem of allies in the fight against bid rigging. And speaking of ecosystems, I must say again, as I did in the first question, that interagency collaboration is a key. We work closely with institutions like the Federal Audit Court in Brazil, which is responsible to identify anomalies in procurement audits, and with the Comptroller General's Office, which handles disciplinary and administrative sanctions. Last but not least, the very important relationship with the Federal Prosecution Service, who is the body in Brazil responsible to lead civil and criminal proceedings. And in Brazil, cartel is also a crime. And especially when bid rigging overlaps with corruption. And the federal policy often carries out search and seizure operations based on CADE's finding. So I can say that this interagency cooperation is working very well in Brazil. In short, to resume, empowering procurement professionals with the tools, trainings, and institutional support to detect collusion early on is, in our view, one of the most effective strategies to stop bid rigging before it starts.
Thank you. Does that chime with your experience?
Yes, I mean, it's very similar. And again, the idea is trying to sort of exploit multiple avenues and multiple tools. So, for example, for us, it was very successful back in 2012 to draft guidelines on bid rigging that we distributed to public procurers, and explaining exactly what to look for in the tender and when to report to us as to suspicious sign. That led to a sharp increase in our bid rigging cases that reached 50% of our cartel cases for many, many years, until a year and a half ago. So now, in fact, we're going to revise this vademecum, which we think might be helpful. The other thing, as I mentioned before, I think it's very useful to think about the fact that when firms share the pie in a bid rigging, they have to take turns generally, unless there is a division in lots where each one of them gets one contract. That means that they have to identify the designated bidder. And that means that they need help from public procurers to make sure that that designated bidder is actually awarded the contract, and wherever there is some discretion in the tender, that is not obvious. So we have seen that corruption helps bid rigging, and that is why these kind of collaborations with public procurers can be extremely helpful, because they give you, for example, information from wiretapping, and you can use that information that is related to a corruption case because perhaps it's also relevant for bid rigging.
It's very interesting. Is the Spanish experience similar, or?
Yeah, it's similar. We have a guide as well that we are updating now. It is dating from 2011, and we go phase by phase from the design to the awarding of the contract, and in doing so we are trying to not only confront the problem of cartels, but also efficient regulation and avoiding undue obstacles to the activity. But I have to say that this has worked mainly because of our training of civil servants, as for example you are doing as well, not only in a pre-training, so before anything has happened, but also after a cartel has been fined by us, we contact the authorities. We explain to them some of these cases, in fact, were uncovered by our economic intelligence unit. Then we give comfort to the authorities that we have the means to help them, and they understand that very well. And now our law, for example, in the public procurement law, has 2 articles that make compulsory for the authorities when they detect something that could have suspicious, there is a fast-track procedure, they send it to us and we analyze it. And in there, I have to say that Brava is extremely useful because it allows us, it's a very fast-track procedure, and it allows us to have, it will be included. For the moment we are doing it on the basis of the facts that are provided by the authority, but I think that Brava will help us a lot. Apart from that, cooperation is absolutely necessary. In the same sense that Elisabetta was saying, we are part of the anti-corruption program in Spain with other authorities, and we cooperate with the Ministry of Finance, for example. We have exchange of information, and it is proving extremely useful for everybody. A last element that I would like to mention is that it is not only a question of cooperation among us to be more effective. It has a deterrent aspect as well that I would like to underline, because cooperation with other agencies or institutions shows companies that there are many eyes watching them, and that if they are trying to go one way, this authority is going to be reporting to another one. So I think this idea of all involved in the gardening, of competition, it helps a lot.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and also brings us incredibly nicely to our last topic, which is around deterrence more generally, or another way of putting it is how we incentivize compliance. And I know that Italy has quite a unique approach to incentivizing compliance in this area, and I wondered if you could tell us a bit about, Elisabetta, how it works and also what you've learned from that system.
Yes, absolutely. Let me say it's really a pleasure to sort of listen to other countries. One thing I didn't mention earlier on is that precisely following what the Spanish authority was doing under Cani, Fernandez as president, we are looking back at the bid screening tool. Okay, so it's very, very useful. So I'm happy to share this other tool which we manage. It's not exactly something you will have imagined, but is proving very, very sort of useful. It's called the legality rating system. It was introduced in 2012, and basically it's a system that certifies the compliance with the law, and in particular antitrust law, consumer protection law, but also environmental law or work safety regulation of firms based in Italy which reach a certain turnover. And firms can voluntarily apply to us. It's all free. They send us the documentation and we give them a rating score, which would be maybe zero, so no, no compliance, or 7 different scores, depending on how well is their compliance system. Now, why this is so interesting? Because first of all, it has been seen that firms value this kind of certification a lot. And they value being certified as firms with a high level of legality compliance because, for example, they get cheaper credit. Banks are more willing to give them funds at lower rates because they are certified as compliant with the law. They also obtain public funds more easily. And last but not least, in public tenders, many public procurers are choosing to award, to give firms with higher rating or with a rating, more points in the award score. So that means that if other things equal, a firm that has a higher legality rating can have higher probability of winning the contract. And why this is so relevant for us? Because it means that when the firm, for example, commits an antitrust violation or a consumer protection violation, they lose the rating. So they lose these additional scores they may get in tenders. And in that regard, if you think about it, this is a way somehow to tackle the trade-off that debarment systems create in terms of deterrence versus participation. Because as you know, debarment systems, they may be mandatory or discretionary, but they always create this problem that if a firm that has committed an antitrust violation and participating to a cartel is barred from participating to other tenders for a number of years, then that's very good for deterrence, but it's bad in terms of participation in the next tenders because you're going to have fewer firms. And if you have sanctioned 5 firms of a cartel and you end up with just with 1 firm participating in the tender, that is not good news. So the debarment system are very interesting. And many countries, Italy being one, choose to have a discretionary debarment systems precisely to try to manage this trade-off in the best way. So whilst these systems are zero or nothing, all or nothing punishment, so either I don't do anything or I tell you you cannot participate to a tender, the legality rating system offers a kind of continuity of solutions in the sense that with the legality rating, if a firm commits an antitrust violation participating to a cartel, it loses the rating, but it can still participate to the tender. So in that regard, there is still a deterrence effect, but by allowing the firm to participate, even if now it will not have the same chances as before because of these additional points I mentioned earlier on, you are going to still have participation. So I think that is an interesting, at least a system to sort of introduce. Let me just say, though, it's time consuming. We're managing 9,000 submissions a year. We have 15,000 Italian firms that have the score, so you really need to be super efficient to sort of manage these things. Thanks.
That's absolutely fascinating. As you say, it's really great to hear about other people's methods, and for me, that is anyway really quite a unique, but very nuanced way of cracking that really tough question of continued participation in public tenders through known cartelists. I think we've got a very short amount of time left, but Cani, perhaps you could very briefly share with us your views on particularly forms of enforcement other than fines and how important they might be in driving deterrence.
Thank you. In fact, we do have a compulsory public procurement ban and it is automatic. When you are infringing competition law, you are barred. But we have to declare for how much, I mean for how long, and for which part of the market, or in services or products. It was before the Ministry of Finance. It is now ourselves who are going to decide on the, I mean, it's a maximum of 3 years, and we of course are taking into consideration whether there are sufficient participants in the market for successive bids and other aspects. But the thing is that we can't we can exclude this public ban, I mean public procurement ban, with a compliance program that is sufficiently rigorous, credible, and I mean, that provides us with the confidence and trust that what happened will not happen again. And in doing so, what we are doing, in fact, is providing the companies the possibility of coming clean after the infringement. We review whether they are serious in what they are proposing, and in that respect, we can leave this ban, which, given the importance of public procurement in Spain, as you can imagine, is a very deterrent and inclusive mechanism. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm conscious that unfortunately we're now, I think, out of time, so we're going to have to bring this interesting discussion to a close, at least here on the stage. We can, of course, continue it later on throughout the week. And I just wanted to say a huge thank you to all the panelists for their contributions today, which I think has demonstrated that while we may not always talk about it so much, cartel enforcement is alive and kicking and moving with the times. So thank you very much.